my lecture recital, I will introduce the Chinese-Canadian composer An Huang, his composition, a requiem in Chinese, and the basic rules of Chinese diction. At the end of this lecture, we will perform the first and the last movements of this work, which are the introit and lux aetabra movements. I hope that through my lecture and recital, you will have a basic understanding of composer An Huang and his requiem, know how to instruct singers to learn Chinese diction, and be interested in discovering and performing more Chinese sacred choral music. The title of my document is A New Edition of An Huang's A Requiem in Chinese with an English translation and International Phonetic Alphabet transliteration. Requiems play an important role in Western music history. Many musical masters composed requiems include Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, Luigi Cherubini, Anton Loika, Louis Hector Berlioz, Giuseppe Verdi, Antonin Leopold Dvorak, Gabriel Urbain Fauré, and Maurice Dufay. Large unaccompanied requiems, however, are rare, not only in the classical and the romantic eras, but also in the 20th and 21st centuries. An Huang's A Requiem in Chinese is a traditional sacred choral work. It is the only large unaccompanied mixed voice choral requiem in Chinese history. It was completed in May 2004, and the premiere was conducted by An Huang on September 12, 2004. Despite being a large unaccompanied requiem in traditional Western style with Chinese liturgical text that is unique in both Western and Eastern music of the 21st century, it did not get very much international attention, and only a small number of performances have been given. In my opinion, the difficulty of pronouncing Mandarin and understanding the Chinese text are the main obstacles for non-Mandarin speaking choirs to learn this piece. Thus, my study will provide an English translation of the text and a new edition with IPA symbols, which will allow this masterwork to be performed more easily. During today's lecture, I will introduce this requiem's compositional background and basic Chinese diction, and explain the special IPA symbols used for this piece. I also will provide rubrics for teaching proper Mandarin pronunciation to non-native Mandarin speakers. The information of An Huang's biography is mainly from his autobiography, which is unpublished. There is also some biographical information from the following two dissertations: De Tang's The Aesthetics and Artistic Treatment Research on Huang Anlun's choral work, written in 2007, and Yu Shupei's An Analysis of the Attempted Amalgamation of Western and Chinese Musical Elements in Huang Anlun's Piano Concerto in G minor, Op. 25B, written in 1997. An Huang is a Chinese-Canadian composer. His output includes works in most of the musical genres of our time: opera, Broadway-style musical, ballet, choral music, vocal music, chamber music, film music, and more than 40 symphonies. Among Chinese-Canadian composers, An Huang is prolific, and he is one of the few composers who has composed many sacred choral works. He composed 19 sacred choral pieces, The larger ones are Easter Cantata, Psalm of David, Psalm 22, Revelation, Glorious Church, and a Requiem in Chinese. Although the Requiem has not received much international attention, most of An Wenhuang's compositions have been widely performed and warmly received globally. He has had many scores published and many CDs released. More than 20 of his works have been chosen for the collection National Musical 100 Years, China's official music publishing project. An Wenhuang was born in 1949. His father, Fei Li Huang, studied with Paul Hindemith and graduated from the Yale School of Music, and was one of the founders and the director of the conducting department of Central Conservatory of Music. His mother, Fang Xinzhao, was a professor of music composition at Central Conservatory of Music. At age 5, An Wenhuang began to learn piano from his parents. At age 7, he completed his first collection of piano compositions. In 1957, Huang entered the piano department of the primary and secondary school affiliated with Central Conservatory of Music. He studied with Xiao Xinyuan, Gan Meilou, and Yuan Xinshao. During this time, his mentor, Yuan Xinshao, introduced him to many famous Western composers, including Johann Sebastian Bach, Ludwig van Beethoven, Johannes Brahms, and Sergei Rachmaninoff. In 1966, when the Cultural Revolution began, Alan's father was wrongly convicted of being a secret agent from the United States. His family's cultural property was confiscated, including all of their books, scores, recordings, and compositions. An, at age 17, retrieved a record of Symphony No. 3 in E-flat major of 55 by Ludwig van Beethoven. When no one was looking, he had a record player in an old grand piano and often listened to the recording under the grand piano at night. In 1968, at age 19, An was sent to a farm outside of Beijing to do daily labor for 4 years and suspended his institutional school life. In 1971, he met his composition teacher, Zi Chen, at the camp. Chen introduced him to traditional Chinese folk songs, Chinese operas, and Chinese compositional techniques, which had a monumental influence on his compositions. An Wenhuang stated, quote, "Without the disaster of the Cultural Revolution, I would not have been able to walk out of the ivory tower of the conservatory. Without being sent to a farm, I would not have known what Chinese music is." In 1973, An Wenhuang began to work from the Beijing Opera Troupe, where he met Hui Yongyu, who incorporated the use of an orchestra into Beijing opera. Yu told An that combining Western music technique with Chinese music was a new acceptable compositional method. Because the influence of Huang's mentors and friends, Yuan Xinshao, Zi Chen, and Hui Yongyu, Huang formed his compositional style, a combination of Western music techniques and Chinese musical styles and genres. In 1977, Huang became the youngest composer in residence at the Central Opera House of Beijing. In the following 2 years, Huang composed 5 operas, 3 ballets, and many symphonies. At the end of 1977, the Cultural Revolution ended, and people began to re-enter the educational system. In 1979, Huang applied it to the Central Conservatory of Music as a composition major, but was rejected. In 1980, he went to Canada and studied composition at the University of Toronto under the director Luther Klein. In the following year, he joined a Chinese Baptist church. Huang realized the influence of faith on music and began to compose sacred music. In 1983, Huang received a fellowship in composition from Trinity College of Music in London. In the same year, Huang came to the United States and studied at the University of Pittsburgh. Later, in 1984, Huang studied with Professor Jacob Druckmann and Martin Bresnik at Yale University. At the same time, he became a music theory teaching assistant. After receiving a master's degree from Yale University in 1986, Huang declined to be a PhD candidate, despite a full scholarship offered by Yale. He devoted himself to his compositional career and went back to Toronto. Anwen Huang became a member of the Canadian League of Composers by invitation in 1991. He was the president of the Chinese Canadian Music Society of Ontario. Also, the international who's who in music included Anwen Huang in its 1996 and 2006 editions. Anwen Huang is a devout Christian who was born into a devout Christian family. Anwen's great-grandfather was a Chinese teacher at a Western mission. Anwen's grandfather, Yougan Huang, was among the second generation of Christian preachers in China. Yougan participated in the creation of the first Chinese Christian orchestra, Shanghai Chinese Christian Music Orchestra. Anwen's father directed the Shanghai Chinese Christian Church Fujihan Orchestra from 1937 to 1942. Anwen's mother conducted Messiah when she was 20 years old. Feiran Huang, Frank Huang, Anwen's uncle, participated in the creation of the Hong Kong Oratorio Society. After Feiran moved to Canada, he created the largest Chinese Christian music group in North America, Vancouver Oratorio Society. Anwen Huang was influenced by Western classical music from the time of his childhood. His parents always played recordings at home and took him to concerts. He was exposed to Matthew Passion, BWV 244, and Messiah, HWV 56. In 1981, Anwen went to Canada and heard sermons and felt that he understood the heart of God and thus heard a call from God. He was then baptized, become a Baptist, and realized why J.S. Bach wrote SDG, Soli Deo Gloria, a Latin term for glory to God alone, on his manuscripts. Subsequently, Anwen's life philosophy changed. He decided to give his soul and music to God like J.S. Bach did, and began to compose secret music in 1981. In August 2002, when Anlong Huang was in Moscow recording an album, he received a phone call from his wife that his only son has drowned. It was a devastating blow to Anlong. In the following year, Anlong's close friend, Guan Chenxu, passed away. He felt heartbreak because of the death of his son and friend, but he would not let himself join in his grief. He felt the love and support of God and composed a lot of liturgical music to praise the Lord, including his requiem. A requiem in Chinese was commissioned by the Hong Kong Oratorial Society in 2003 and completed in May 2004. This requiem was premiered at the Central Hall of the Hong Kong Cultural Center on September 12, 2004, and was conducted by Anlong Huang himself. The Hong Kong Oratorial Society commissioned Anlong Huang to compose the music and commissioned Yujia to write the text. They were required to compose a large requiem for a concert. Yujia was a close friend of Huang's and a senior Old Testament theologian, as well as a consultant of Shi Hua Sheng Le, a liturgical music group in China. Tang had written 135 liturgical books and is known as the most prolific theologian in Chinese history. Because Huang and Tang were not Catholics, they didn't use the traditional requiem text. They decided to mix liturgical and non-liturgical texts together. The non-liturgical texts were inspired by the Bible and were contributed by Yujia. Huang said that this idea was inspired by Johannes Brahms' Iron Duchess Requiem, Opus 45. When Huang began to compose the requiem, he asked himself, quote, "What innovation or breakthrough can I make? Since there are already numerous splendid sightings of requiems for chorus and orchestra." Quote M. He thought of the Russian Orthodox Church and admired Sergei Rachmaninoff's all-night vigil, which gave him the idea to compose an unaccompanied requiem. He sent it to Hong Kong Oratorial Society, but the director did not reply immediately. Anlong was worried that his unaccompanied requiem work had not been accepted. After 2 months passed, the director of Hong Kong Oratorial Society replied, quote, "All of the singers in our choir are moved and enjoy your music. When we rehearse, tears welled up in our eyes." Quote end. The premier choir included 3 choirs: the Hong Kong Oratorial Choir, the Diocesan Choir Catholic Diocese of Hong Kong, and the Chinese Christian Chorale. These choirs were all amateur choirs, totaling almost 150 singers. Anlong considered that the singers did not have a lot of experience singing large unaccompanied musical works, so he wrote an organ part to support the singers during rehearsals. This requiem has 7 movements. There are Requiem ad Telegram, De Profundis, Pie Jesu, Sanctus, Understudy, Libera Me, and Lux ad Telegram. The work is set for a choir of SSATTB with 2 solo voices, mezzo-soprano and tenor. Anlong used the pentatonic scale as the main melodic basis of the work. This is a typical Chinese music element. This is the most important pentatonic melody. See musical example 1. that is used in the second movement, third movement, fourth movement, and last movement. Now the soloist will sing musical example 1. 安伦 used several other music elements in addition to the Chinese pentatonic scale. For example, in the Liebe Lame movement, Anlon quotes the appropriate Gregorian chant in Paradiso and the solo melody. In the Lux et Tabula movement, Anlon reprised Hallelujah music from the beginning section, which is inspired by gospel music. Influenced by Bach and Brahms, Anlon is very fond of and skilled at composing polyphony. At least one polyphonic section appears in every movement, including a fugue in Anlon's style. In my opinion, a requiem in Chinese is a masterpiece which includes all of Anlon's choral compositional techniques. This requiem is not only of high artistic standard, but is unique in its integration of Eastern and Western music styles, expressing truly universal worship of God. For this study, I will make a new IPA edition of the text of Huang's A Requiem in Chinese. The IPA pronunciation will be added to the original Chinese text with my English translation at the beginning of every paragraph. The new edition will enable non-Mandarin speaking singers and choir directors to access and perform this work more easily. Chinese characters are logograms or pictographs that do not provide any phonetic information. Chinese people use two phonetic systems to learn the pronunciation of these characters: pinyin and zhuyin fuhao. Pinyin is composed of Latin alphabetical letters, and many letters are pronounced in the same way as in English. Zhuyin fuhao consists of symbols that are difficult to be understood and memorized by non-Mandarin speaking singers. Obvious differences can be seen between these two systems in example 1. These two systems will not be introduced in my document. I will use IPA to provide the Mandarin pronunciation. For those who are interested in learning Chinese diction, learning the pinyin system is the best place to begin. Here are the basic elements of Chinese diction. Mandarin is monosyllabic, so there is no difference between stressed or unstressed syllables. Although there are 5 different tones for every character in Mandarin, tones will be omitted in my study because these tones are superseded by melodies in music. In Mandarin, Chinese characters usually begin with a consonant, followed by a vowel, and end with another consonant. The initial sound is called shengmu and can be one of the 21 consonants or 2 glads. The vowel alone, or the combination of the vowel and ending consonant, is called yunmu. Not every Chinese character begins with shengmu, a beginning consonant, or ends with a consonant. Therefore, Chinese characters have the following four possibilities with regard to 声母 and 韵母, consonants and vowels, in Figure 1. There are 11 vowels in Mandarin. The singer will now pronounce the series of sounds found in your handout in example 2. Because the last vowel cannot be pronounced alone, the singer will pronounce it with the consonant sh. A, O, I, U, A, Ü, Shi. The last two vowels are not used in English. The vowel Ü is pronounced with an E tone position combined with a U lip position. The last vowel sh always follows the consonants z, 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 j, j, sh. It is pronounced as an extension of the preceding consonants, so singers should be trained to pronounce this vowel with those consonants together. The singer will now pronounce these two vowels in the example 3.
I, z, 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 ch, ch, sh.
In musical example 2, you can hear how these two vowels are sung in the music. Now the choir will sing this musical example. The vowels F and F are only used as diphthongs following the vowel E to become iye, iye. The vowel is an R-colored vowel, which sounds like the ER in the word butter. Since native Chinese speakers combine the vowels with the final consonants as a whole 韵母, it is important that non-Mandarin singers should learn the 韵母 together. There are only 3 final IPA consonants in Mandarin. Please see example 4. N, N, and R. The consonant R is used in the same way in English. When it is used at the beginning, it will sound like the R in the word range. When it is used as a final consonant, it sounds like the R in the word ear, and is not pronounced like Italian road r. However, the R doesn't not appear as a final consonant in this piece. There are the combinations of pure vowels and final consonants that are used in the record. See example 4. Singers should learn the pure vowel first, and then learn the pure vowel with the final consonant together. The singer will now pronounce the series of sounds found in your handout in example 4. An, en, in, un, yun, ang, en, yin, ong. There are many diphthongs in Mandarin. This requiem only includes the diphthongs found in example 5. Whenever singers sing a diphthong, they need to sustain the first vowel longer than glide to the second vowel as the release of the song. In addition, there are also combinations of diphthongs and final consonants, which are included in example 5 as well. There are no triphthongs used in the requiem text. The singer will now pronounce the series of sounds found in your handout in example 5.
Ow, I, you, ye, you, o, 我, 尾, 晚, 月, 眼, 影, 晚, 望, 远.
The common error is singing the diphthongs is that singers unknowingly delete the second part when they sing, especially when the diphthongs are used on a long note. For example, they sing my as ma. In musical example 3, the text shui can be wrongly seen as shu, which should be avoided. Now the choir will sing this musical example 3. There are 21 consonants that can be used at the beginning of a word. They are listed in the example 6. All of them are used in this piece. Singers can learn this shengmu by group with special vowels, which are the common sound combinations in Mandarin. Now the singer will pronounce the series of sounds found in your handout in example 7. P, P, T, D, G, K, H, F, S, C, S, Sh, Ch, Zh, M, N, L, Xi, Ji, Qi, Yi, Wu, R. There are only 3 consonant sounds that are not used in English. Sh, J, Ch. These consonants are always followed by E or U, so singers should learn them together with these vowels. The fricative consonant sh sounds like she. One needs to pronounce sh first and quickly change tone position to E vowel with flat lips. C. The fricative consonant G needs the t sound added before sh. G. In order to pronounce ch, one needs to use more air than chi. For all of the initial consonants, one must pronounce them quickly and then sing the following vowel for a longer duration. Now the soloist will sing the musical example 4. You can hear how these 3 consonants are sung in the music.
主必亲自降临，主必亲
they are only used as the initial consonant, 声母. In English, sometimes one may connect or glide over words. For example, the pick it up can be pronounced as pick it up. However, since Mandarin is monosyllabic, Chinese native speakers do not glide over two words, which will change the meaning of the text. Therefore, singers never connect the ending consonant of a word with the beginning of the next word, forming a consonant combination. For example, one cannot glide over the words qi and ai as qi nai, or yuan and an as yuan nan. In musical example 5, you can hear how these words be correctly separated. Choir will now sing the musical example 5. Permission from the composer An Huang to make a new IPA edition score of Huang's requiem, which will be provided at the end of my document. Although I will not introduce the pinyin system in my document, I will use the pinyin system for making the new IPA edition. For transliterating every Chinese character, I need to find the right pinyin in the Chinese diction first, and then transliterate the pinyin to IPA by consulting the standard Chinese IPA chart. This standard Chinese IPA chart was created by Weisung Li and Eric Z and published in the 2003 Journal of the International Phonetic Association. In example 8, the pinyin of the character shen in the Chinese dictionary is shen, which is the IPA shen in the standard Chinese IPA chart. The pinyin system provides the pinyin vowels and consonants of every Chinese character. The standard Chinese IPA chart provides all of the IPA vowels and consonants in Chinese as well. Therefore, I am able to match the pinyin symbols with IPA symbols to make the IPA edition of the text. The English translation of text will also be provided in my document. For the liturgical Chinese text, the English translation sources directly from the New International Version of the Bible. For the non-liturgical Chinese text, the English translation was made by myself and reviewed by the composer An Huang. The English translation is to help people understand the Chinese text. When I translate the non-liturgical Chinese text, if there is Chinese word from the Bible, I will use appropriate word from the English Bible, such as God, Holy, King, etc. Otherwise, I will use the Oxford English Dictionary to translate the text. The English translation will be reviewed and approved by An Huang. Besides the new IPA edition score of a requiem in Chinese, my document will provide the compositional background information of this requiem, An Huang's work list of his liturgical choral works, the English translation of the requiem text, and my IPA transliteration of the text. My document will include web links to recorded examples of Mandarin pronunciations with the special IP vowels and consonants. People will be able to successfully learn the pronunciation of the reference text with the videos. I believe that the new addition of the score and my document will enable non-Mandarin speaking singers and choir directors to access and perform this work more readily and easily. A record in Chinese is the only unaccompanied liturgical Chinese record since the founding of People's Republic of China in 1949, and was composed by a famous Chinese Canadian composer. It deserves more international attention, since An Huang's liturgical choir works list will be included in my document. Conductors may also discover his other secret choral music to expand their repertoire. Thanks all for listening to. This was a long journey in my life to reach this point. Thanks to my committee members, Dr. Elizabeth Schauer, Dr. John Broback, especially my mentor, Dr. Bruce Chamberlain. Without your guidance, I would not be able to complete my U.S. educational journey, this document, and become a conductor. Thanks to the composer An Huang. Thank you for composing this excellent record. Thank you for providing me with first-hand information. Thank you, my reviewer, Li Schmid, for your help and encouragement. I am grateful to my parents for their unconditional love and support. Without them, I could not have pursued a doctoral degree. Thanks to my husband, Mao Xunma, for your understanding and unwavering love. Now we will perform the first and the last movements, which are the introit and looks and calendar movements.
喜在你。
不由脚声。 我